Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation where I will be talking about Alien Covenant, and the subtitle is Superhuman or Failed God. So a brief summary of the movie is it's set 10 years after Prometheus, in which a new crew is heading to a planet called Origate 6. After losing their captain, the new captain decides to follow a human voice transmission to an off-course planet. There, they find oxygen, plant life, and what seems to be an overall ideal planet to settle in. After dealing with horrific incidents regarding xenomorphs, the crew eventually encounter David and figure out exactly what happened to Prometheus and Elizabeth Shaw. However, the real truth comes out and the crew must now struggle to survive and protect their colonist ship. The main focus of this presentation will be on David, and I will be focusing on his perfection but also his imperfections and ask the question, should he be seen as a superhuman or a failed god? One of the first humanoid models, and an interesting aspect is that he wakes up slash activates in a throne chair. He's positioned as perfect. He's positioned as regal. He's positioned as a leader. He also immediately perceives himself as perfect, choosing the name David after looking at Michelangelo's statue, which is also known to be one of Michelangelo's perfect works. He also immediately has free will and creative freedom, which then grows into ambition and curiosity. And in the beginning of the film, when he's asked to play a piece, he chooses to play Entry of the Gods into Valhalla. Eventually, David comes to see humans as monkeys, and he also quotes Shelley's Ozymandias. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty and despair. He also takes pride in his work. He says, I found perfection here, I've created it. And he also kind of, in a sense, seeks validation, or also is very sure of his perfection when he responds, I'm glad you said it, to a question by Walter, which was, and are you the next visionary? An interesting aspect is that Walter was aware of the fear towards David from his previous creators, and however, for reasons unanswered, he didn't mention any of this to the crew. And this is kind of the hierarchy that seems to be established yet also broken, in which the engineers, who are the creators of humanities, are above humans, which are then above synthetics. However, from Prometheus and this movie, it seems as if David breaks that hierarchy, and not only breaks it, but then reestablishes himself to be on top of everything else. However, David's perfection soon comes into question when he can immediately pinpoint the lifespan between him and Wayland. Yet you are human, you will die, I will not. And this is his response to Walter when he asks about humans, and he says that his quote unquote father was entirely unworthy of his creation, but then Walter counters that by saying, yet we were created by them. And this was also Walter saying that David was seen as too human, too idiosyncratic, and then David responds that he was not made to serve. However, as his perfection is called into question, we kind of start seeing more of David's imperfections, in which he gets the poet wrong from the poem Ozymandias. He also ignores the context of the poem, in which it's actually a broken statue with only words of superiority left behind. There was nothing truly perfect or superior. And at the end of the movie, he tells Mother to play Act 2, yet Das Rheingold only has a single act. He also finds his creations enviable unions and perfection, perhaps subconsciously aware of his own perfections or lack, yet unwilling to accept his closeness to humanity than his superiority. He also creates biological organisms as perfection instead of more synthetics, and he thinks himself of as perfect, but Walter calls him an off note within the otherwise harmonious symphony. And if he finds his creations perfection, then that means that he inherently can't be perfect as well because he's not the same as them. And we have also a bit more focus on David's final mistake at the end of the movie, in which the ending scene is to bring back full circle of the beginning, where his piano playing is called anemic without the orchestra, indicating David's incomplete evolution. However, the ending is the quote unquote full of the song, yet incorrectly named by David as Act 2. At the same time, Valhalla is a godly place, yet it is also a place only achievable by an honorable death. David cannot die, so he can never reach Valhalla, placing himself as entering as a fellow god. However, has he truly? Is indicating perhaps either David's false and perceived only ascension into godhood, and therefore questioning his superiority. In this case, is and should David be considered higher than humans in any way? He loathes humans, yet it is his humane qualities that allow him to achieve said perfection and superior quality potential. So then this also, as mentioned before, the hierarchy once again seems to shift, in which David places himself as the androids or synthetics above xenomorphs, above the humans. Yet the in regards to his mindset and thought and out perspective of the xenomorphs and seeing them as perfection, does that mean David is subconsciously placing himself beneath the xenomorphs, or therefore further creating his own superiority and perfection as the creator of said xenomorphs, which then also once again brings back to the question of him in disdain of humanities and his quote unquote father's unworthiness of creation, yet at the same time being created by them as well. So perhaps David might think of himself as perfect but not superior, but this entire hierarchy outlook is constantly challenged. And that was it for my presentation. Thank you.